Boa tarde.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having you here on this panel, and thank you for all of you who are actually participating. Some of you came from other cities just to be here with us. So this afternoon we'll be talking about 5G. How can 5G can actually help transform business, linking IT, big data, and cybersecurity, privacy, which is also very important. Thank you so much for all of you who are watching, this content that is being recorded. I'm sure it's going to be a great topic. So we would like to talk about 5G versus 4G. It's going to increase the speed in 20 times. So we're not only talking about, having entertainment easier, but, like in the most remote places of Brazil, we will always benefit from it. But we still have a huge challenge to go through it until we reach there. And here on this panel, each one of us have one expertise, and we would like to show you a little bit of every single one of them. So we're just going to quickly go around for them to present themselves. So let's start from here, please. Good afternoon. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Carla. I'm a partner at TozziniFreire Advogados, and I'm responsible for the technology and data safety department. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Emanuelle. I'm the director from Data Intelligence from the Economy Ministry and CyberSafe. And I think everyone links our department with gov.br. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabela. I work with the ANPD, National Data Protection. So it's a great topic for us to talk about it. Good afternoon. My name is Arashiro. I'm VP from Loft Infosec. And thank you so much for having me here. Good afternoon. My name is Maiko. I'm a technical specialist at Microsoft. I look after the safety part for big companies, and I'm helping my customers both when we're talking about security and compliance for the LGPD and internal issues. So if you notice, we have people from different departments here. My name is Nycholas. You can call me Nick. I'm over 20 years of I have over 20 years of experience. I had the opportunity to work with Maiko at Microsoft, and now I work in the Council Board of Safety, Cyber Safety. And the idea here on this debate is to tell you all this knowledge that we have available. So if you'll be here in the event later, you can always come to us and ask us in person as well. So when we're talking about 5G, we're not only talking about speed of access and navigation, we're actually allowing new business. When we're talking about infrastructure, imagine that you are inside of an industry, like you have all of the legacy there, and then you can have all of the devices connected. The agro business, it's a very relevant business for Brazil, have more data, more index in order to make better decisions and reduce the operational costs, and also other applications that the IoT are bringing to our market, to our industries. So I'd like to ask Maiko. Maiko is a specialist with big data. So Maiko, when the technology it's right there, available, how do you collect this data? How does Microsoft see this data collection and taking this big data and the IoT to the market? Well, one of the main features from Microsoft is not that we do the AI or big data, but it's also a platform. So the investments that are done on the platform to create knowledge and to create, customer people, allowing them to develop solutions on the platform, bringing those data and connect this data with everything that is connected on the internet in this scenario. This is where the Microsoft is, allowing processes within Microsoft. So not only working as a solution, as a big data solution or AI solution, but as a platform. So for example, we have integrations with OpenAI. which is an organization that brings innovation on AI, and it brings the facility, the knowledge of AI for those scenarios. And this has been only expanding. So we already have an integration with our CEO, which is Sachi Anadella, and the CEO from SAM. And we were able to bring this intelligence to the platform and also bring all of the investments that we have been doing when we're talking about computing scenarios. So when you're thinking about big data, I think that the main feature is how can I bring all of this data and work on this data. So the platform makes a lot of difference. The amount of information that we're going to process is proportional to the amount of quantity of data that you're able to store and process in this scenario. So Microsoft has been expanding on those points of view. And then regarding specialization, I've done a specialization course on big data because I knew my, cyber safe, I really would require it. So I knew that one day I would require this knowledge. So it really helped me like connecting a lot of points. Okay, great. And Isabela, when you're talking about, when we're talking about technology, we don't have a lot of challenges on the marketing. Technology is available. It's much more accessible nowadays. How is the government looking at it as a regulation, to make sure that it can guarantee the privacy for every single person? Well, Nycholas, first of all, I just would like to say that it's a disclaimer, whatever I'm saying here is my personal opinion. It's not the NPD board council opinions. So how do we see these on the regulation department? Well, we look at it with a lot of caution because at the same time that you've mentioned how fast things are actually, changing and staying, we also have an increase in the amount of data. And at the same time that this is really, really good because everyone likes to watch a video quicker, this also increases the amount of data that, devices are collecting about you, about yourself. So then we have like more data going around, and this could implicate it in, higher incidents, regarding, leakage of data in the market A, B, or C. So for example, in banks, just an example, okay? So of course we're concerned about it. We're concerned about the volume of data that's going around. And also when we're talking about regulation, we have to be concerned with it because worse than not having a regulation, it's having a bad regulation. And because everything is really new and everything moves way too fast, it takes a while for you to, finish it off a cycle. And once the cycle is finished, you have to do a report on it. So every time I think about it, it's like as soon as we finish regulating a topic, that specific topic would have already developed and then our regulation will be out of date. So our main concern is how can we make sure that those processes are quick enough so we will not avoid innovation. The government should be available to make things easier. Innovation promotes jobs, promotes well-being for everyone. And then you can think about it every different type of regulation, like a regulation box where you have in a specific environment
where you make it easier for 1 year for this technology. It's going to work with less regulation so that we can understand how it works and then we can understand how to regulate it. So we have different challenges and interface with other agencies, the Ministry of Economy, NPD, digital secretariats and other agencies. And not only government entities, but market entities as well. That's why it's important to participate. I think you did a great introduction for Manu to bring her perspective. Yeah, I think Isabela mentioned it, and in a very good way, this data speed. This brings us a big challenge to find a balance between the regulation and what it's supposed to supervise and monitor, and how much we gathered information. So currently we have going to celebrate 140 million gov.br accounts. This is a very good amount of accounts. We've been growing so fast, and now we're concerned to make the citizens' journey to be fluid, based on data, and safe, ultimately, so that the citizens trust the government. And more specifically, we joke a lot when we talk about data protection, and we see that image of a padlock, but the LGPD, which is the Brazilian General Data Protection Regulation, says that they own the data. So how can we put this padlock, the key for this padlock, in the citizen's hand? That's what we're concerned with as a government. How can we be able to create this ecosystem that really enables citizens to be able to share their own data, they are able to manage their data, and that they know that this is the biggest challenge, I think. How can we instruct and educate this humongous population we have all over the world? Here in Brazil, we have more than 211 million people. How can we educate these people to really understand what are the risks and benefits and manage this in the best way possible, so that everything flows appropriately? And when we talk about IoT and 5G, we are talking about customization capacity of this journey to deliver more convenience that is enormous, and how we can use it in the best way possible to benefit the population. Another discussion that we always have is regarding AI. In our department, we discuss a lot about ethics. We have a commission, and we're going to have a lot of data. We already have a lot of data. We're going to have much more data at a much greater speed. And how can we be able to have all of this data traffic following the transparency, applicability, directives, and without allowing biases? I mean, I think these are important challenges that we've been working with and trying to cover everything. But things are evolving so quickly with 5G, with quantum computing. Everything's evolving so fast, but we're trying to make things happen and deliver a better experience for the citizens. Yes, congratulations for your work. These are relevant figures. And now, Carla, how have you been helping your customers to get what's the best that technology has to offer, and not only the regulation, but doing privacy and compliance and security by design? Yeah, just complementing on what Manu just saying, we need to take a step back. We need to think about the culture. We have the General Data Protection Law, the LGPD in Portuguese, which is a new law, and when we have this contact with the customers, with the citizens, if we work with these concepts, they seem easy, they are simple, the principles and the concepts, but when we go and discuss this with the customers and the clients, and we try to help them with adequacy programs, providing consultancy, training, this is something that's really important. When we discuss with them, that's when we realize how this privacy culture is not established in our country. So I think this is the first step. The people need to understand the law, demystify the law. The law is not here to prevent or hinder innovation, but companies need to understand that as they have new technologies available and all this potential for such a greater volume of data that will be collected and transmitted, these companies need to internally have internal organization to understand their processes, understand what is the purpose of this data, and also be concerned with security, and also this issue of privacy by design. Just collecting data because you want to collect data because it's good to have data, it's not necessarily a good thing. Some of the customers say, let's collect as much data as we can, and then afterwards we'll see what we can do with them. But this is an opportunity for the companies to structure their processes in an improved way. So when they have any incident or any issue, if you understand your chain, your process, you're able to respond quicker to these issues. And this really helps with ethics and responsibility. And transparency as well, because for me, one of the big challenges is transparency. Transparency is not only conveying all the information and having these privacy notices that people don't read and don't understand, but how you can transmit this information so that all the holders of the data really understand this information and are able to manage their own data. Yes, Shiro, and for all of this to work, to be able to deliver the solutions from one end and collect the data from the other end, the issue of connectivity is such a challenge for Brazil with such a huge size country. So what's your perspective? Yes, as I see it, 5G is only bringing greater complexity to issues that we are already facing. When we think about the difference and the gain of 5G and the new business that it's going to bring as well, due to the faster network and a network that can serve much more devices per square meter, 1 million devices per square meter, this is much more than before. But at the same time, we have to consider that this is more restrictive in the great capitals of our country. When you think of the size of Brazil, which is a continental country, one of the gains of 5G would be for regions that are much far away from the capitals. For example, the north region of the country, northeast region of the country, the Amazon. That's where we're going to bring the real benefits for agribusiness, for example. If we need to connect information from one harvester, from a tractor, or a product that's being processed in these regions, and to bring this, all of this information to be processed in the cloud, usually the data follows a path that this data has go all the way to the data centers in the southeast and south regions, because that's where the transatlantic optical fiber cables come from other countries. So the challenge now is how to bring this gain in terms of speed and latency, but with this such greater distance. Does it make sense to bring out to São Paulo? No, now maybe a challenge for the data centers providers and the telecom operators, how to have this connectivity at closer locations, so that we arrive at the cloud providers in a more efficient way. And the challenge is not only the connection itself and the investment in infrastructure itself, but if we think with 5G, we have until 2029 to deliver the infrastructure that has been promised. In 2030, we'll have 6G, and then we'll just finish the 5G infrastructure and we'll have 6G. Can you imagine in South Korea, they're already doing some tests, right? Yes, they're doing some tests, and the number of base radios for 5G in Brazil, we're going to have 800,000 base radios for 5G in Brazil, and China has approximately 1 million already. So it's a much greater dimension. And then there are other concerns as well. The IoTs and data communication and all of this security and data privacy. When you talk, if you talk about security and privacy by design, by default, this device is connected to 5G network. Will they bring this security? Not necessarily, because the added value is not interesting for them. So where do we have this infrastructure? In the infrastructure, right? If we're talking about a distributed network closer to the place of origin of the information, the security infrastructure must be there as well. And are we prepared for that? Like I said, we're still solving problems with the environment that we have now, and in the future we are going to have more and more problems to add on to this security that currently is not fully developed. So with 5G, we're going to have data that are a little bit more sensitive, which are the health data. How can I allow with the 5G to bring this health data? And currently, we have smartwatches, for example, that monitors our health and so on. And this data, they're shared with your cell phone, and then this data is shared in a cloud that is a little bit more restrictive. But if we have this with 5G in a more encompassing way, we'll have 5G, private 5G, and agreements with the operators. How can we ensure that this data is not being shared in an undue way with other companies or other institutions? Or this data is not being collected in ways that we are not expecting? So there are several challenges, not only related to connectivity, and I think that will be a benefit ultimately, because we think everything that happened from 2G to 3G and with 4G, now you can do some video calls, and if you use 4G, you know that these video calls are not so good, right? Because there's a delay, there's a latency there, and when you speak, only after a few moments the person hears. So with 5G, this will be much quicker. And thinking about the health segment, let's say I want to undergo surgery, and if with 5G, it will allow the physicians to monitor and follow the surgery in real time, because now we won't have this latency in the transmission of this data. But now we have a privacy issue. How are we going to handle this data in a safer way, in a more secure way, or with less external interference? Thank you, Shiro, for sharing. What I wanted to share with the audience here is a few practical cases that we've been working with. You don't have to mention any names or anything, but cases that generated positive benefits for our customers or for the market. So, Carla, let's start with you. How have you been helping your customers? Does it include an interview process to identify the more sensitive information? Can you sum up your activities with the market? Yes, regarding this whole process of adaptation to the general data protection regulation, there's always an initial discussion to align the expectancy with the customer, to present what we're going to do, and then we move forward with meetings to try to understand the processes that this company uses. Sometimes they themselves don't know their processes that well, so it's a good opportunity for these companies to organize their processes and understand what type of data is being collected, for what purpose, with whom they're sharing this data, what are the security measures adopted. And at this moment, we are able to identify important gaps to be able to really help with recommendations on what to do to mitigate these gaps. Some issues, for example, Isabela can give us some better examples. You know, there are some pending issues regarding regulation by ANPD, so we don't want to propose anything that is not feasible. I mean, let's work with priorities. Let's work and see what are the most critical points here in terms of systems, what is used the most, what is the most relevant content. But we have the other end as well. We've been working with it hardly, and it includes contractual issues, because companies have established several partnerships and hired many people because of these new technologies, because they want to use and make use and take advantage of these technologies. So there's agreements for data sharing, for example. There's a platform that wants to offer in some way some financing, for example, for rural producers. Or they want to have a partnership with a financial institution. And then there's an issue of how to share this data, and the customer many times asks us, I want to receive this data, I need to know this or that. So that's what the point where we need to take a step back and ask them, what do you need this data for? What are you going to do with this data? How is it going to be shared? Is there going to be access for everyone in your company? So there are several issues that need to be considered. both for the contracts specifically and practical recommendations for our customers. We've seen this happen a lot. And also about security incidents, something that has been increasing a lot, and we already have helped our customers with some answers and how to answer to these issues regarding notifications and also prevention for the companies to be prepared and to have a response plan. So these companies need to really think about the measures that they're going to adopt regarding security, but the chances of incidents are basically certain. So companies need to be prepared to mitigate the damage and the losses as much as possible. And I think that these three fronts, the advocacy, the contractual side of things about sharing data and so on, and response to incidents, these are the three main things that we've been doing. Yes, it's nice that you mentioned cybersecurity. I've been working with cybersecurity for 20 years, and I never imagined that we would see many cases affecting business continuities. It's an operational risk nowadays, cybersecurity. You can't enter with a ship at a port, for example, because everything is encrypted. And they ask you for ransomware, and then they're going to attack these people who have paid for these ransomwares, and this affects business continuity. So if you have the backup, they're going to have to encrypt the backup as well, but the backup is completely isolated, but for a large period, part of the information can be leaked, and they can reconstruct your data. So we can recover from an incident and start the operation again, and then you receive some communication from the attacker saying that he still has your data, and if you don't pay me, I'm going to leak your data. So that's a big challenges. So what I say to you to talk to your companies is here in the audience, you have the fire alarm here, it goes off, you know what to do, right? Go to the exit, meet downstairs. But if you have a ransomware attack and the company is not operative, do you know how to communicate this, how to go to the market? Normally the answer is no. So take a deep breath, but start doing this exercise. When you're not encrypted and you're operating, you feel butterflies in your stomach, you can't read the procedure, and this needs to be automatic. So let me ask one question. You have been interacting with several companies in your daily routine. You work inside your agency. Well, in practice, I work at NPD and I'm more working internally, but we have contact with the companies by new associations and public accounts, right? Yes, the NPD regulation process, we need to hear the society, so it's very important for us to hear them, and we have the assumption that we have the last word, but sometimes we need to think where we need to start from and how we can improve. So in this regulation process, we have public consultations. So when we have a minute for a standard at the website, and then everyone from the society, everyone can contribute as much as they can. And then we are able to, the people can also take part in public hearings as well. So this is really important for us for maturity reasons. There's one thing that was mentioned regarding communication and transparency. This is something I would like to mention to everyone here as a message. Sometimes the customer wants more data, and they say, okay, no problem, I can see what I'm going to use this data for in the future. But think that the more data you have, the more data can be leaked, and the more accountable you can be.
And every time when we're talking about LGBT, when we're talking about the personal data, we have to think about, what's the ends of it? Why do you need it for? So if you cannot answer that, then you probably should not be looking at the data, Sometimes we go to, a business establishment, and the first thing that they ask us is for like our full name, our social security, our telephone, everything, and then every time this happens, I think, if there is a leakage from this company, I can just imagine, the big issue, the big problem they're putting themselves into it. So it would be nice to have some guidance regarding this, because of the cyber safety. So the most data you have stored, the more will be the fine that you're going to have to pay if your data is hijacked. So last Sunday, and the ANPD has just was just on her second anniversary. So it's something that's really, really new. So when we compare from when we started discussing, data protection in the United States or in Europe, I'm not sure how many of you here are from the governmental sector. It's a lot of work. We had to do like internal guidelines, to think about, how we can do it, from scratch. So what I'd like to let you as some news from the market is participate from the NPD regulation process. You have more information about what's going on your business than what we know. So if you don't come to us to tell us, what's going on, maybe we won't be able to know it, So we have to work together. We have to build things together. So this is very important for us. This is very important. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Manu, would you have a case to share with us in which, this technology or the knowledge from this citizen that it's more digital is actually bringing some benefits? Well, we say that we now leaving the digital era and going to the GovTech era. This means that we built an ecosystems with more than 4,000 digital services on our Gov portal, and we have probably about 300 million access every month on our channels, 164 million of logins we had in the last month, but we still don't see this as the journey, integrated in the journey. So we can actually see some benefits, especially when talking about the use of the data that is available. So from July last year onwards, we started doing, personalized recommendations for our citizens. And we already noticed that we had an increase on more than 300% on the service use conversion. But this was just the first step. Now we are starting to have like a more personalized overview according to every single person, but we were still more based on the navigation history rather than on the CPF of the person. So now we notice that this personalization has a high potential. So we started going to the GovTech era, which means that we are going into the fluid journey, which is integrated, so it takes into account the companies that participated in it. So just moving on to the new challenges, and putting together with what Isabela has just mentioned, requesting everyone to join and to help us. We really need, the companies and the population to help us out building this whole process, because in order to have this whole journey in working, we have to work together with the other companies. We have to work together with the LGPD, of course, and it has to bring a lot of benefits for, the final user, the citizen, So this citizen will be satisfied with the public services. So what I'm saying is that if I'm purchasing a ticket, an air ticket, for example, why can I just, from the same place, have my passport issued, have my, a vaccination card, the certificate, have all of it together, shared with the airline company, with having the knowledge of why is everything gathered together and why is that happening, So we have to deliver the better service, but we are also responsible, in bringing these innovations for the companies so that the companies can actually participate it and trigger their business. not even counting the commitment to take to the government the data governance strategies, the AI. So we have to have ethics and also regarding safety. So we have the PPSI, which is the Safety and Security Protection Program from the government. And it takes all of these capacitation program for the different departments, so we can actually know how much actually the cyber departments are ready for the security issues. So we have a huge challenge. We already seen some great results, but we have even a bigger challenge ahead of us in order to go to our next mile, which is regarding the GovTech. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing this with us. So when we're talking about hyperconnectivity, our attack area, it's exponential. We're talking about telemedicine, all of the government services. I know that we don't have like a magic recipe, but can you give us some tips regarding how to reduce the attack surface or to make their lives harder? Well, there is something that we have on Microsoft, which is called Digital Defense Report. This report is very clear. It has a very interesting data, which means that attacks regarding passwords, they happen 921 attacks per second. So all of those, trials regarding identity, especially gov.br. For us, it's excellent because it brings protection. It's what we call the second authentication factor. For me, to have a second authentication factor makes the whole difference, because it complicates the life of who is trying to hack me. So we, from Microsoft, we also do like a reply from the incident. We have 93% regarding cryptography. We found privilege access issues and lateral movementations. So what does it mean? I can steal someone's data and then I can move it to another computer, and then I can do my ransom attack, and I can do the cryptography of this data. So the main clue is the easiest one as possible, both from your personal side and also from the professional side. Identity makes a whole difference. So it's still the easier layer of a hacker to attack on. So you see that, being, increased. For example, YouTubers have lost like giant channels because someone, stole their credential, or WhatsApp. Everyone heard about it, So for those of you who have a double vector, nowadays you have authenticator, it's important, to have this working. And Microsoft also investing a lot in identity, because for the big companies, most of the identities of the companies, because your access, of user and password, it's probably on a directory that Microsoft has created. And this protection within the system makes the whole system. So if I could give you one tip, put a level of protection on your identity. So something that's quite interesting is that we're doing some investment which is called a verified identity. So the idea is that we're actually able to put on the power of the user all over their identities. Doesn't matter if it's passport, medical information. So as soon as you come to a place, you're going to have that as your own identity. So Microsoft is working for it and already has a solution to connect different industries, different aspects regarding the identity. And also, apply the correction pads. So whenever they say that you have the correction pads, we are aware of it, but also the hackers are aware of it. So they work with like the 0 days, the vulnerabilities. So if you have patch for security, apply it. Shiro, I would like to give you an alternative. Why doesn't the IoT comes with the security? Or you can give us some tip about cybersecurity. Well, let's talk about both of them. First of all, talking about security, the Brazilians in general, by culture, we don't really look after our data. So I think this is one of our biggest issues. We don't care about, telling our CPF address, telephone number for anything, Anything they're going to do, they ask you about all of this data. So they give all this data to you. So the protection layers, they do happen, when you're talking about authentication, multiple factors. But I think they're more related with how aware we are, If you tell someone that they already use a multiple factor, in the bank, for example, they use different pins, different passwords, one to access and one to finalize the transaction. But we're not able to explain to people that having the double authentication on the cell phone is the same thing that happens on their phone. But then they tell, but then what happens is, if your password comes like to 12 digits, then the person is going to write it on a post-it and put it on the computer screen, and then there is no point of doing that, But, there is the amount of trials, So if you have an email password, you can try it forever, And they let you know try forever and forever and forever and forever. And that's why we have a huge amount of trials trying to rob the credentials. And to be aware of that really helps when we're talking about social engineering, because the hugest source of attacks is not on the systems. It's much easier for me, for example, to have Nycholas' password rather than, if I go on his Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and then I can act like I'm him, and then I might have the chance to be able to access his information. But we have to look after this and thinking about our life as a whole, our family as well, because we're really concerned about it on our company level, but we're not really concerned about it on our family level, on our daily issues. So we have to bring this down to our reality. So, for example, if I wanted a name tag from a company in order to get into that company, would I try to steal the name tag from the CIO? No, I would like to steal the name tag from someone who works for the cleaning lady, So when we're talking about the IoTs, it's the same thing. So why don't we really invest on IoT security? Because the IoT manufacturer is concerned on delivering the functionality. So nowadays, I have Wi-Fi cameras on my house, so I'm not going to put cables around, right? So instead of using my Wi-Fi, now I'll be using my IoT on 5G. So we're not concerned if someone else is actually seeing your home, especially because a lot of IoT devices come with a lot of setups that nobody changes. For example, user and pins standard, So for years, you could use the Wi-Fi from the neighbor because you knew it was exactly the same from factory. So we have to be aware of it, And we only gain this awareness as life goes by. So with the IoTs, it won't be different, but I think that the security of the IoT will be dependent on the infrastructure security. Why? Because the IoT manufacturer will not be concerned with it. So the company who provides the security will have to be looking at it as well, Looking, for example, are those IPs segregated? So if a hacker will be able to invade a camera or a fridge, for example, how much can I actually avoid it in order to not having this invasion going to a business network? Because the business, they are still, separating networks. So most of them, they don't have this separated, People, when they just put a router and everything's on the same network, including the cell phones. So if by any chance the person clicked on an SMS or on a link and their cell phone was invaded, and because they are connected to the company's network, maybe they'll be able to insert something in a server or in another device, and will allow the whole damage to happen. And even a comment that you've mentioned, the 5G will potentialize the amount of attacks. So if we're talking about availability of service, then if we're talking about 5G and 10 gigabands, imagine if I had like 1 million devices with 10 giga doing the DDoS, trying to turn down a website or something. So we have to change some profiles now. So the security cannot be done the same way that is done today, So if we not do our safety based on machine learning and artificial intelligence, then we will not have people which are able to look at all of this data load, in order to be concerned with the protection itself. Okay, thank you so much for your participation. So we have to go to our last round right now. So Isabela, please, your final collaborations. Okay, so I think that the main message, a lot from what we spoke here today, is what we can do to avoid this to happen to our data, And this is linked to the ANPD objective, which is to create a culture of data protection here in Brazil, which I think is like the 1 million challenge, because we're really concerned about, for example, with the micro entrepreneurship, because, he used his cell phone, personal computer, all for the company. And then what I would like to leave to think about is that NPD is working to educate it, but also the treatment agents, trying to educate the companies, not only the people. And what I wanted to tell you is, access the NPD website. You have a guidance of like how you treat the data. You have all of the pinpoint informations, talking about double factor authentications and all of the other informations available. So you have to work together, with the other institutions and with the market. So we all have a lot to gain from one another. And thank you so much for having me here. Okay, just adding on something that you already mentioned, Carla mentioned that it was cultural. So here in Brazil, with the exception of the companies that are like financial or that come from the stock markets, we didn't really have that amount of regulation. So it's something that's actually happening recently.
Well, I always say that, and I think that companies cannot be accommodated and thinking, I have my security systems, I invested X millions in the system and everything's okay. No, don't settle down. You need to keep investing in your people and in awareness. This is very important. And for us, when we say, we're going to discuss the law, it seems boring, but we have been thinking in more and more ways to disclose this content in an easier way. So nowadays we see gamification taking place with this content, with visual law, and don't settle down. Question why I need this data, why I need to do this, and invest in this awareness, because employees, they receive training and this can be disseminated at home with their colleagues, and this is very important. Thank you for your participation. Very nice, Manu. Well, I think that just to reinforce what the girls have just said, I think this issue of education and really thinking about how our data is going to be used and the weight of this data. We joke the same way we joke. For example, we don't give the key to a house to everyone. So when we're talking, for example, about our face, it's basically giving the key to our house to someone. And of course, technology is going to evolve and things will evolve as well. But we need to raise this awareness as a government together with NPD to bring this culture to the population. But for example, I can't, for example, give the key to my house to everyone, so we need to take care as well. And at the same time, not get desperate, because the data and the way it's to have it reliable brings comfort both to people. It reduces our efforts and our work. So this new technological world, we need to weigh this appropriately and use it responsibly, both companies and all of us as citizens. Yes, so I'd like to thank all of you. It's been a great conversation. Thanks for your audience. If you're watching us after the recording, please comment, and we hope they are all well, safe, and with good privacy. Thank you, everyone.